Welcome, everyone. We're going to start in a minute or so, waiting for people to come in from the waiting room. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for Students and Alumni Living Abroad amid the COVID-19 pandemic, brought to you by UCLA Alumni Association and also part of UCLA's 2020 International Education Week. I'm Christine Werlinick, Senior Director of Regional Networks at UCLA Alumni Association. Today, we are having a conversation with Bruins living abroad during the pandemic. Two of our panelists are current students, one living in Canada, the other Panama. We also have two alumni with us, one living in Spain, the other in England. Our panelists will share their experiences today, but in no way are experts on the coronavirus, the pandemic, or even their countries. We hope you have fun and feel free to add questions to the question section, and we'll get to those later. I now want to first thank our panelists for being here, and I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves. Evelyn, why don't you start?
Of course. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. My name is Evelyn. I am an undergraduate student right now at UCLA. I'm a third year majoring in communications and minoring in classics and film, and I'm in Canada right now.
Thank you. Nydia?
Yeah, hey guys, it's good to be here. Thank you for the Alumni Center for having us here. My name is Nithya. I am in Panama right now. I'm from Panama. I am a fourth year global studies major, minoring in environmental systems and society. It's a mouthful, and music industry. And yeah, very happy to be here.
Thank you. And I want to introduce John, but I also want to mention that he serves on the board of directors for the Alumni Association. John?
Hi, everyone. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for the invitation. John Arboleta, class of 1996, Latin American Studies. I'm based out of Barcelona, Spain. Been living overseas for 17 years, and I work at Adobe, and I'm responsible for all of our K-12 business around Europe, Middle East, and Africa.
Thank you. And Sahil?
Hi, my name is Sahil. Nice to meet all of you. I am a UCLA graduate of class of 2013 with a major in economics and political science. By virtue of being in LA, I kind of fell into entertainment and media. So that journey kind of slowly took me towards London. I graduated and worked in a talent agency in LA and New York. And then I've since moved to London, where my family is originally from, although they're still living in San Diego. And I've worked at a TV company called Channel 4 and at a TV company called Viacom CBS currently.
Thank you. And Sahil, while you're already on, why don't you tell us how things are going in the UK and London? Are you closing down again? Where are things in the pandemic?
I think the UK quite similarly mirrors the US as opposed to the rest of Europe. In a lot of ways, but having said that, we are actually mirroring a lot of Central Europe right now by going into our second lockdown. Thursday marks our second week of sort of proper lockdown. We did have a lockdown for about 3.5 months from late March through sort of early June, where nothing was open in terms of pubs, bars, restaurants, any hospitality. Slowly that opened up over summer. Things were kind of going great with our R, which is our rate of COVID spread, quite low. Over sort of the tail end of summer, we've seen that rate increase, and different measures were taken across the UK with different tiers of lockdown. So for a while, London was in tier 1, then went into tier 2, whereas other places across England were in tier 3 or in tier 4. We jumped immediately straight up to tier 5, though, once that rate of COVID spread went, quite rampant. And yeah, we've been in that for about 2 weeks. We've been told that COVID, this current lockdown will end December 2nd. I think the hope is to get, everyone back out and about for the holiday season. I think a lot of businesses have lost a lot of money. And there's just kind of a general dampening of a vibe during the holiday period when things are closed. So that's the goal. Who knows what will actually happen, but I'm hoping for just a couple of more weeks, but mentally prepared for a lot longer.
Okay, thank you. John, same question. How's Spain doing?
Spain has been doing, it's been stable in many ways. It's stable in the sense of where we're at now is kind of similar to what Sahila said. We've gone through this second wave, but I think this second wave with a bit of more experience because I don't think anyone knew what was going on or how to respond to this in the first place. What Spain does in a way is it's the central government has called the state of alarm, but they're allowing each state within Spain to determine how they want to handle that. So just for our listeners, there is no Europe-wide plan on how you do this. Basically, each country or even each state or regional government may decide what they're going to be doing to be able to do that. But you do tend to see a tendency in how they're responding to this. I live in Barcelona, which is in Catalonia, and we have a curfew in place now. So from 10 p.m. until 6 a.m., unless you're an essential worker or there's a need to be out, you're not allowed to be out. All the bars and restaurants are closed as of 9 p.m. All the food that you're going to be doing during the day is takeout at the moment. You have to wear a mask by law when you're out and about or you're entering in a store to be able to do that. A lot of precautions, everything on public transportation to be able to. So people respond relatively well to this, but you are seeing an uptick, and this is why they implemented the curfew. University students are currently doing distance learning at the moment. Students would be in the case in the, like, let's say elementary school and below are in school. Why is that? Because a lot of parents, they need to work. And if you're at home and there's no childcare for you, what does that do? So they're really trying to do everything they can to limit the disruption that can be so that parents can work, whether they're working from home, as most of them are, so that their children can go to school. I have an 8 and a 10-year-old, they're going to school, but some like high school students, especially like maybe junior and up, or college student, university students could be doing distance learning at home because they're more independent. So usually every 2 weeks, they're reevaluating the situation, and we are just informed that bars and restaurants will be able to open up to a certain time. So that's the situation on that level. On my personal level, I work for Adobe. Their policy is everyone's working from home pretty much globally. No travel until offices are closed until July of next year, and that's a decision they
Wow,
made.
already they
Like,
decided that?
they made that decision 3 months ago.
Wow.
And all travel is ceased. So we're not, I used to travel like 60% of the time. We're not traveling, so work from home. And they've been really great how they accommodate and supporting us and being able to do that. And the other thing, just to add from another perspective, is it's economically, you're seeing it's hard, I think, for really small and medium businesses who don't have the capital and the wherewithal to stand 2, 3, 4 months without generating income. So you're really seeing a lot of smaller businesses probably not going to be open a lot. I don't know what the statistics are, but it's going to be quite high in being able to do that. So there's a big economic impact happening. Governments are trying to see, Spanish governments, the EU governments are trying to see how they can subsidize or support people to be able to do that. It's tough times right now. Although we're healthy and the rates are okay, but on a rise, there is still an economic impact that's having a huge pain on people's everyday lives. And but that's a situation. But in general, I think people are trying to have the best outlook they can and trying to stay sane and as much healthy as we can during this.
Yeah, thank you. Nydia.
Yeah, so Panama has been interesting. I got here, I think the 16th of March this year, and ever since I've been here, I've been technically on lockdown. Like my parents have been very worried about this, so we mostly stay at home. Panama had a strict lockdown for a very long time. It was a bit too much, but in October they decided to open up a little bit and open up flights and stuff. So they opened like a month ago, but now they're seeing cases rise up again very badly. So there's most probably going to be a second lockdown. And specifically in the town that I live, which is Colon, it's not the capital, but it's a town, and we have curfews like until I think 10 p.m. is a curfew. Before it was 7 p.m., now it's 10 p.m. So they're trying to change the timings and like extend it. But basically been on lockdown. Cases are rising up again the moment they opened up. Probably going to go on a second lockdown in a nutshell.
Evelyn?
Yeah, I came back to Canada on like the 20th of March, and there was a pretty heavy lockdown at first for a few months. You know, nothing was open, everyone was staying inside. But then I think maybe like two months ago or something, things started to ease up. You know, there are people out on the streets. Um, you know, libraries have been opening, and that's like my main source of like comfort because the library is like 2 minutes away from our house. Um, and you know, students are going to in-person classes. I see like, you know, students of all ages walking up and down the streets. And lately, I think there has been somewhat of an upsurge in cases. So, you know, certain like institutions have been closing down again, like the library, for example. But overall, it's probably not been as drastic as it has been in certain other places. Um, that's at least that's my experience, and I know it's a little bit different for everyone else around here. But yeah.
Thank you. Sahil, are you working from home? Do you go into work? What is your situation with that?
Yep, I've been working from home since March 23rd, I believe, with no site to go back into the office. And a lot's changed over that period of time. Originally, we were told it's going to be an experimental thing for a week. In that week, they decided quite quickly that it was going to be a longer term thing. And we were told, you know, so working in Viacom CBS, we own MTV, Comedy Central, Nickelodeon, and a host of other channels. My job is not as critical because I'm on the international partnership side of things, whereas people who need to work on the transmissions have to kind of be in the office. So I've prioritized making an office of 1,500 people in London safe for a small group of probably less than 50 people, with the aim of, you know, having tiers of people that can come back that are more business critical. We were told that we were in tier 4, tier 5 or so within the company. Therefore, you know, the business critical tier 1 employees were in the entire time. They experimented with bringing back tier 2 employees in September. They found quite quickly that a lot of other companies weren't going back. A lot of staff were very reticent to go in. And also that there were tier 3 and tier 4 and tier 5 employees that were reticent to be left home because, you know, a lot of people live on their own. They get very lonely. They, you know, their mental health suffers as a result of being at home. So instead of, you know, dividing it by who is business critical, they did a staff-wide survey at Viacom CBS for all the international offices. The US office kind of operates separately. And they kind of gave some people the option of being able to go in if you really wanted to. But what that means is people like me who are more comfortable staying and working from home, and I've had pretty comfortable work set up, I don't see myself going back into the office for at least a couple more months, probably similar to John along the lines of summer 2021. But again, it's all touch and go.
Okay, you brought up another question that I want to ask about. How do you keep up your morale?
Not gonna lie to you, it's a tough one. I've been a strong mental health advocate for the last few years and a mental health first aider within my company, and I did that at Channel 4 as well. To be honest, I think the best thing that has given me clarity during this time is daily meditation. I'm not a spokesperson for Calm, but I invested in it September, and I've been doing it pretty much religiously ever since. And it's great to have that sort of cognitive dissonance from what's going on outside of the world and what's going on in your own head. Ultimately, the brain is a muscle, and exercising it is amazing. And if you're going to exercise the rest of your muscles, definitely exercise your brain. On the note of exercise, I try and go for a few long runs a week. That also helps balance me out. I've got a good community in place. We've got a pretty tight-knit building. We're all quite close friends. You know, some people don't want to socialize, some people do. During the first lockdown, it was pivotal to have sort of people around for games nights or whatever. I know a lot of people don't have that. I would recommend picking up a hobby. I think I've become quite a decent cook since lockdown started, experimented with new things. Ultimately, I think having something that comes off that's positive off the back of COVID is going to be good. And it just makes you feel more productive and useful. But yeah, I think those are the main things: meditation, daily exercise, and having a hobby outside of work, and then just trying to get up and walk around and work from different areas of your flat or apartment.
Yeah, very good. John, same question. How are you and your family keeping up morale during this time?
I think it's this time around. The first time around was tough for everyone. I think one was full lockdown. Now where we're at, I mean, it's not a new normal. I keep calling this is the next normal, and there'll be a next normal phase after this, and the next normal. We just keep finding we're able to we're still able to go out, so that's great. We go out and we just limit ourselves with what we have available to us. So going out, meeting with people within the limits that we have, but always putting safety first. So we're pretty good with all this. And I think just to reference, there was a question in the chat, which I think was really cool, about how's the lockdown for citizens abroad to do that. I can tie that in a bit.
Mhm.
Look, I think from a European general perspective, it's health and safety first, to be honest. I think I'm not trying to paint a broad brush here, but there is something about with Europe that the health and safety needs to come first. There's been criticism about the government's flipping back and forth. What are we going to do? And I understand you got to balance out the health of the economy and what that does. But beyond, I mean, I don't think people look at this as an invasion of personal freedom as much in Europe, because that personal freedom has a cost to it, right? If we don't see it as a personal freedom, and I'm an American living in Europe many years, I think the Americans are thinking, what's happening in the States? Over 100,000 cases a day. What's out of control, right? In the place like the United States. So I think here we would say it's health first. If you're going to do it, let's just do it, and being able to do that. And we'll find a way to economically to stay ahead, because at the end of the day, if we're not, I think the government is saying, if we're not taking care of the situation, the economic impact is going to hit us anyways, in different ways.
Yeah.
So in order to Rodney's question, I think here the Europeans don't see it as an invasion. You may get tired of it, but there's a greater good saying we got to take care of each other, and how are we going to do that? And let's have a clear path forward. That being said, that's kind of, I think, what the situation is here, across the feeling here. It is shocking to see what's happening in the States, and it's hard to see that,
Yeah.
because
Luckily California, I'd say, is a little stricter. They've been more careful. But traveling to I went to Yellowstone this summer, and to see other states where nobody wore masks, you didn't have to wear them when you went into a store. I think that's contributing to where we are right now, and hopefully
that's a little bit of what
we'll
we've
get a
seen
little
here.
stricter everywhere.
That it's
Oh, is it?
okay for us to wear masks. If you go to a store, you got to gel up your hands. You respect these norms because you're doing this. It's not an invasion on us. It's taking care of the other people who you share your streets
Right.
with, who you share the air you're breathing with, to be able
Yeah.
to do that. We're not getting on an airplane. We're not traveling. We're not going anywhere. So we limit that. So we accept the reality that this isn't going to be permanent. They'll, maybe a year from now, or we'll be in a different situation, but we have to tighten our belts. And I think being able to do that, and I think that's kind of some of the sentiment that's there around Europe, generally speaking, I think.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry,
Nydia,
John, I actually wanted to add to that.
Oh, go ahead, please. Yes.
Quickly, I think in the UK, speaking from our perspective, the NHS is something that the UK is very proud of, which is our national health system. And for the beginning of lockdown, our initial lockdown, there's a clap every Thursday to honor all of the workers who are frontline workers, who are doing their bit to help out. I think because it's such a national institution that the UK is so proud of, people are a lot less hesitant to wear masks out in public, to obey the rules of lockdown, at least the initial one. I think the second one, time will tell. But it is that respect of, the nationalized healthcare system that does contribute to things in the UK, at least.
Thank you. Nydia, I have a couple questions for students. So can you share with me how remote learning has been going for you, especially living in a different country and time zone?
Yeah, for sure. I can actually, I'm gonna talk about a bit about like my experience, but also about the experience of other students that I know are in like time zones that are way more difficult to deal with. Because as an ambassador, I'm in a committee this year where we're
So can you
focusing
mention
around.
the
Sorry?
how you're an ambassador? Can you mention your role?
Oh yeah. I'll come back to it. So first of all, about me, not gonna lie, the daylight saving caught me off guard. The 1 extra hour difference, I was not ready for that. It's just a 3 hour difference though, so I don't have it as bad as many people, but I do have classes like until 11 p.m. So it's been difficult to be on Zoom at that time. Like my entire dinner time is just on a meeting, on a call. Um, I think online learning has been difficult, but probably mainly because I have to do it from home, because it's difficult to like set those boundaries with your family, where like, okay, this is my class time, and like don't walk in at this point, or like, like try to like keep it down at this point. So that's been difficult to try to figure out, but I definitely think it's helped me focus more on academics, because there's not a lot more going on around me. There's not really a lot of noise, so I can like specifically focus on academics. It's also sad that I'm only focusing on academics, because it's like, oh, my life revolves around just college now. But at the same time, I definitely see a boost. Like I'm able to concentrate more. I'm able to like write better papers and stuff. So I know that other students, I have friends that are living in Singapore, Indonesia, Thailand. They're not doing too good with the time zone difference. And I'm an ambassador at DASHU, with the DASHU Center, representing international students. And I'm in a committee this year called the International Student Advocacy Committee. We're also doing a couple of things for International Education Week. But one of our main goals this quarter is to try to advocate for more time zone friendly exam periods for students, because I know I have friends, like there's someone I know in Oman who's waking up at 1 a.m. to do an exam from 1 a.m. to 4 a.m. to do midterms and finals. And that's just like not it for international students. I mean, it's not the best time to be taking a final. Everyone's, the time zones just completely ruined their lifestyle. So it's been difficult, and definitely trying to advocate for it, and seeing if we can speak with individual departments so they can speak to professors so they can be more lenient about it. For me, as a North Campus major, I definitely have seen professors be more lenient about having asynchronous classes and extending deadlines and stuff. I wouldn't know if it's the same for STEM, but I would say that from personal experience, most of my friends that are in STEM are the ones who seem to have the issue. So definitely going to try to be focusing on that and try to help international students if possible.
Evelyn, same question. How is remote learning going for you and the time? Well, go ahead, yes.
Sure. Well, I completely agree with Media about all of those points. As for me, right now I'm in Eastern time, so I'm 3 hours ahead. So personally, that's worked pretty well for my schedule. I try to schedule the morning classes, so then I end up taking them at around like, between 11 a.m. to like 1 p.m. And, it takes up a good portion of the day, it feels like, when you kind of block everything like that, but it also works out. And uh, honestly, I feel like I have more trouble focusing at home, even though there aren't as many distractions, just because, I'm like, ooh, there's my phone. Ooh, here's my computer. Ooh, there's no one here to tell me I can't do this. And so there is somewhat of a like downturn in quality with regards to like my papers and stuff. But overall, professors have been pretty lenient. I'm also a North Campus major, technically, I guess. Um, and I'm taking classes that I genuinely like, because I used to do more STEM stuff and I was like, no, this is not for me. And being online has also given me the opportunity to you know join new clubs and like do stuff that I probably wouldn't.
Actually, I have a question about that. And you're leading right into my next question. Are you participating in activities clubs, and how is that going remotely?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I feel like with the online medium, you can just like jump on a Zoom call, and if you feel uncomfortable with like being you can, have your camera and microphone off, and it'll be totally fine. So I rejoined, like the Film and Photography Society and like the Bruin Film Club and like West Wind and like a bunch of other clubs. And we've been working on like short films and doing other activities remotely, which is a very interesting and enlightening experience. So there are some perks to the to online learning. You got to look for that silver lining.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, John, I have a question that came in for you. I would appreciate your thoughts and observations around how technology is shifting during the pandemic.
Well, that's a really great question. I can try to answer it a bit from maybe a little bit from where I work for a software company and doing that. I think it's definitely raised up opportunities for the industry for sure to be able to do that. Because now technology, for example, in this field, I'm in education, technology was present, but it wasn't fully adapted. A digital transformation strategy for whether it's a higher ed campus or a K through 12 school. Some schools were maybe it was a choice, now it's a necessity. So I think a lot of school leaders and policymakers are trying to determine how, because if this happened now, it can happen again in the future. So I think it's accelerated that. And I think trying to understand what's the role of technology. Technology is not the solution in this overall thing. It's part of the recipe of the solution and how does it fit in. So I think each educational leader, policymaker is going to have to think about where that fits in their overall strategy. And I think that's a great thing. I think students in general, they're born with this. They're raised with this. And I think some educational institutions need a way, how do we integrate this in a way that's innovative and engaging and still complements teaching and learning outcomes to be able to do that. In terms of workspace, friends of mine who work across different sectors and industries, some of these companies are saying, look, we don't need to pay a lease anymore to rent the building. Maybe some folks will be able to work from home going forward. Some of them still need to be, Sahil had mentioned this, some people still need to be at an office and they'll need that space, not just because it's your function, but because you just mentally, your well-being wants that. I think there's a lot of rethinking in large organizations or small regarding what this means. Hopefully, I think once we navigate, as we're still navigating this and learning along the way, there's a lot of learnings and things that are being challenged. And hopefully when we're through this and everyone's healthy and safe again and economies are kind of hopefully rebounding, that maybe there'll be some goodness that comes out of the learnings out of this in terms of work and opportunities. People are more connected than ever globally. We talk globally, but now we've been really connected globally. And I think it's been building a lot of awareness. I liked what Nitya was saying, that some of the teachers may say, wow, we're a global campus, but we didn't impact that Oman at 1 a.m. is something different. How does that doing? I think we'll see that coming more and more once we get through the safety and the other issues that we're going through. So I think technology is going to play a larger role, but I think it's important that they work very closely with all their different stakeholders or customers to find out how should that look like to be able to do that. So that's kind of my take on this. I was trying to touch different points.
Yeah, thank you. That was great. A lot of questions that have come in, we asked for questions when people RSVP'd, was how are your countries perceiving the US and the politics and how we're handling the pandemic? Sahil, you want to do that one first?
Sure. I mean, the UK has been in a bit of a chaotic state for the last 3.5 years due to a little thing called Brexit, which is still ongoing, but has taken sort of a backdoor or a backseat due to COVID. It's a tough one. I'm very proud of being American, but I also feel quite British because my family is British. And I get a variety of opinions. Some of them are the sugar-coated ones from other Brits, and some of them are a bit more telling. Ultimately, I think that there is a bit of a disappointment with how the US has handled the COVID-19 situation. But having what I said earlier was the UK has not necessarily handled it phenomenally from the start either. I think there was a lot of telltale signs from a lot of the farther east countries within Europe, like Italy and Spain, that locked down a lot before the UK did. I think had we locked down a couple of weeks before, we could have avoided such a strong lockdown initially. Also, kind of echoing what John said earlier, a lot of regions are deciding their COVID lockdown procedures. Before the UK implemented that it was a tier 5 lockdown across the country. there were, you know, government officials in Manchester and Liverpool, for instance, who are coming out and saying, you know, we don't want to go into tier 3 lockdown. So a lot of what you're seeing similar to, you know, the US political situation, where there's governors or states that kind of refuse to enforce that people wear masks or have certain COVID-19 procedures. You are seeing that in places in the UK, but ultimately, I think our overall sentiment, at least in London, is that we should be doing a bit more akin to what the other European countries are doing, as opposed to what the US is doing.
Thank you. Evelyn, I want to ask you the same question. How is Canada, how are you noticing in Canada they perceive the US and the politics and how we're dealing with the pandemic? Because I believe Canada has done a much better job.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'd like to preface that I'm not entirely sure of how different areas perceive it. The area I live in is pretty like quiet. It's very peaceful. Everyone is very, you know, they're very good in following regulations. Honestly, you don't see a lot of people outside wearing masks of their own volition, but, you know, inside, you know, everyone's very good at following the directions. And with regards to, you know, what's happening in the US, I feel like there are a lot of mixed opinions because right now there are many sociocultural and political issues being brought to light. And, you know, it kind of also brings to awareness that we ourselves also have our own, you know, problems to deal with. It's not all like sunshine and like perfection over here. We also have many issues like systemic racism within medicine and, you know, just so many other problems that we have to tackle. And yeah, honestly, my family, we identify as East Asian, so we also have a lot of influx of news coming in from, you know, like China, you know, our relatives, friends. And so there are so many, you know, mixed opinions about what's going on in the US right now.
Thank you. Nydia, there's a question that came in. Someone had said when they were at UCLA, classes were US centric. Now that students are learning from abroad, do you feel professors are taking that in mind in their curriculums?
Well, honestly, I'm a global studies major, so not gonna lie, most of my classes have usually been very world centric. They haven't been particularly US centric for me. But I do think that it's more about how much an international student brings into the class. Because say if I were in a discussion section for a poli-sci class that's about, you know, I don't know, just like global politics, for instance. If I speak up and I say that, you know, I'm from Panama, I'm an international student, this is what's going on there, the professor definitely takes account of that and starts, you know, modeling it and trying to be like, oh, so we do have international students here. So maybe tell me what's going on in your country, or maybe are there any other international students they can tell me what's going on in their country. So it's more about like how much you bring into the class. Like if you do speak up, professors easily like adapt it and make it more global, I guess. But at the same time, most of my classes have been pretty global. So there's that.
That's great, thanks. Sahil, here's one specific for you. How is the pandemic changing the world of entertainment?
Ooh, a lot. So my job primarily works around advertising, but I work quite intimately and closely with both the events and the commissioning team. So Viacom CBS hosts a variety of worldwide sort of marquee events, including the European Music Awards and Kids' Choice Awards. What we've seen is a lot of those events have either had to be canceled completely or reshaped to digital focus, which has actually kind of been quite good and interesting. The EMAs actually went out November 6th, so last Sunday, and it was completely remotely done, digital productions from across Europe. There were really amazing performances. Unfortunately, there was no live studio audience, but they managed to actually pull off the event, which is one of the first of its kind. You know, obviously a lot of music festivals and whatnot were canceled over the summertime. This was kind of an example that we can host live events in the future. You know, we just might have to tailor them a bit. Commissioning, so production of TV shows is quite difficult, but we saw at the beginning of COVID, our digital team and social team worked quite closely with our on-air team, which were previously quite separate. You've got, production of things that go out on, live TV and on reruns. And then you've got a production of stuff that goes specifically for the digital and social channels, like, cut downs of, to use an MTV program, say like Jersey Shore. The social team would cut down pieces of Jersey Shore and put them out on Facebook, Instagram, so on and so forth. So what we saw was those teams kind of start working a lot more closely together to produce things that were of TV quality, but for the social platforms. Because what we're finding now is there's a lot of regulations about producing TV, but we can actually produce TV level content that would be distributed through Facebook on Facebook Live or YouTube via YouTube Live. So what we're seeing now, I think, is a difference in how people consume culture and where that content goes out. Finally, I work with the film studios on international marketing campaigns, specifically with Paramount and Warner Brothers. We don't know what's going to be happening to the future of film. There's been a strong appetite for a lot of, film directors to keep true to what is the art. So we saw Tenet, Christopher Nolan's film, go out in summertime, which was supposed to be, or the end of summertime, first big marquee film that went out in a long time, because there is still the belief that going to a cinema provides something special than watching something on Netflix or on Amazon. Ultimately, though, going to a theater is not safe. I went to one to go see Tenet, and there was a lot of social distancing measures. Obviously, as part of Tier 5 lockdown, all of that's gone now. What we're seeing is a lot of movie cinema chains are defaulting on the amount of money that they have. So we don't know what the future of cinema is going to look like. There is the hope that it's going to be similar to the 90s, where there's a lot more independent, smaller features and not the big blockbuster films, because obviously those cost a lot of money to make, but they make a lot of money in cinemas. There's also the fear that none of that's going to happen. So the sad truth of the matter is we don't know. We're seeing Netflix and Amazon buy a lot of films, like obviously Borat was bought by Amazon Prime, SpongeBob was bought by Netflix. But we don't know if this is a short-term fix or whether there's going to be a consolidation between cinema chains and companies like Netflix and Amazon. So I think the world in entertainment is in real flux, but all the teams globally are doing all that they can to ensure that new content is put out, that they continue to keep their viewership. And that means some really interesting and special things are going on in the world of entertainment also.
Yeah, I guess it's a stay tuned kind of thing. Yeah. Okay, John, a question had come in. How do you think mental health is affecting the communities? Do you feel people are facing burnout now? And if so, you can also answer personally if you want, but also people
I'll try to answer. I think this probably raised a lot of awareness about the importance of well-being and everything around that. So I think I'll try and answer it from what I've seen here and what I've seen in the organization I work with at Adobe. So I think burnout is huge. We did a global survey. People are working more than they were before. Work from home probably sounded great at first, but you're probably working more hours than you normally would. There's no commute time. You get up, you're on a device more than ever. And so I think what a lot of organizations are realizing is that this was a reality that was impacting people. And so organizations or companies were realizing we have to mitigate that. How do we support that? What do we need to be able to do? The organization I worked at, they're investing a lot of resources, and we're fortunate they're able to do that. Friday is an Adobe day off, a global day off. We've got like 5 global days off between September and December just to recuperate. But then, so that's one thing that we're doing. A lot of health and well-being, from Headspace to having speakers to just saying, meeting free Fridays. One thing's easier said than done, but I think at the end of the day, it's got to be a choice that you have to say, I'm going to stop and I'm going to cut out. And you need to be able to do that. There was a time earlier in this period where my wife and I, we're both working parents. There was this great article that said the parents are not okay in the early phase of all this going on, especially when you have younger children, because they can't separate mother and father sitting at home working. Your mom or your dad. You're not dad, the head of something, or mom, the sales exec, whatever. So this is a reality that we have. And I think part of it is, if you're fortunate to have an organization that supports that, you got to tap into that. Number 2 is, if it doesn't, you're going to have to find ways to connect and have that overall mental well-being that you need. Because if you stop taking care of your mental well-being, you're not going to be good in the various roles and capacities that you have in your life. And then you're going to start feeling stressed. You're not delivering, you're not sleeping. All these things are going on. And I think at some point it's got to be a personal choice that you're going to give yourself permission that it's okay to do this. It's okay. I'm not a bad employee if I'm going to cut off at 5. Or maybe I'm going to get up really early in the morning to end at 5 so I can be with my children or work later. I think you have to be able to do that. And I think companies and managers who manage you are probably responding to that. And this is happening globally everywhere. But my big thing is you got to reach out for the help where it's at. You got to connect with people. There's a lot of isolation, especially for people who are living on their own, and being able to do that. You got to tap into what's out there. And I think at the end of the day, there's things more important than your job or your classes sometimes right now. You need to stay healthy. You need to stay sane. There is still a survival mode going on right now. And I think if you try to find the right balance, so you're always working and adjusting to these different next normal realities, you try to find some sense of balance within that. And I'm hoping that's what's happening with people who can do that. But it's always like a creative process, trying something new and trying something new. So that's, I think, how people are dealing with it. And I think we're humans. We have to connect with people in one form or another, and being able to share how we're feeling is really important. So I'm glad to see UCLA doing things like this and providing a lot of resources that we're offering students and alumni to help them, because sometimes you
Uh,
can feel you're on your own. So
yeah, I was going to ask Nydia, do you want to answer the same question? Like, how are students doing? Are they taking advantage of what UCLA is offering with mental health? And
For sure. I wouldn't honestly be able to tell you about whether students are taking the initiative to, you know, most of my friends are international, and I feel like when you're outside of your home country, you have like a sort of tendency of like not tapping into these resources, because there's a stereotype often in different countries between different families about mental health in general. So I wouldn't be able to tell you that, but I definitely can tell you that it has been difficult for sure. But the best way to kind of deal with it for me has been using creative outlets. I think Sahil was talking about this earlier about how he became a really good chef. For me, I decided to, spend more time in my music and just try to, you know, find different outlets that whether it's meditation or it's playing the guitar, like something that's outside of what you're used to, what you're doing every day, really helps to try to just stay sane. Another great thing that I do is I actually have like a wonderful view from my balcony. It's like the Atlantic Ocean, and there's like a green rolling hill in front. So I just kind of like stand there for a couple of minutes, take deep breaths, and somehow everything's okay. Like that's all it really takes. It makes me realize that it's not like, it doesn't need to be as complicated as we make it out to be. Just giving ourselves a break for a couple of minutes is enough to recharge you and get you back into business, right? So definitely it's been difficult, but there are ways to deal with it, and they're not as complicated as we think they are often. So
Evelyn, do you want to add anything to that? Like, do you know of other students? Understand, living abroad is a little harder than if you were at UCLA, being able to take resources.
Oh, well, first of all, really well said, Nikki. I completely agree with everything you said. I also can't really say for sure. I don't, um, how do I say this? Well, I know of many, like, of my friends, not just from UCLA, but from, different schools around the globe. And I think we're all handling it a little bit differently. As for me, um, I've also been using this time to kind of, similarly look for creative outlets. Just kind of dabbling in different projects. I'll be like, maybe I should give this a try. So, I gave playing the guitar a try, and then I was like, oh, are there any like crochet needles around here? So then I gave crocheting a try. Yeah. And I was like, oh my goodness, I had this like writing project I did for my English class, a few quarters back. Maybe I should continue that. And then, doing research for that. And so basically, whenever I have some like little gap of free time where I'm like, oh, everything's hitting really hard, I'm like, no, let's do something about this. And I try and, invest my time in something, to kind of get your mind going, take your mind off the negative thoughts. And yeah, that's how it's been going so far, at least for me. And I know everyone else is also handling it in different ways. Yeah.
Thank you. Um, Sahil, travel, as we slowly begin to travel, what guidance do you have for traveling through your country to other countries? Um, is the UK having any guidelines, or Europe even, going among
Yep.
countries?
Yep. So actually, I had two sort of holidays canceled. One for April, one for May. Obviously, fell smack dab at the beginning of COVID. And when we were allowed to travel, I did actually have the opportunity to travel to a couple of places, to Istanbul and Seville in Spain for just short trips. So I've experienced what it's like going back to an airport. It's very strange. My central piece of advice would be to vigorously look up what the travel restrictions are for your country, what the other government's guidelines are, because you don't want to get caught and have to pay a fine for something that you didn't even know that you were doing wrong. So a lot of countries have track and trace forms. So it's about ensuring that you have all the documentation filled in prior to traveling, because you can't fill it out there because they will fine you. So that's something to be wary of. Second thing, just wear your mask at all times. And I flew on Turkish Airlines. They had an amazing little pack with hand sanitizers, which I used during my entire trip. So use it as much as possible. I mean, the airports and travel facilities are operating at like a 25% max capacity to what they were before, but just be as diligent as possible and be as respectful as possible. So, we didn't want to be seen as, the obnoxious tourist going into a different country, whether you're from that country or whether you're visiting, whatever it may be, just be as respectful as possible, because ultimately traveling right now is a real luxury and pleasure, and is not something that everyone has the opportunity to do.
Thank you. So with the upcoming holidays season, John, do you think that people are going to behave, or do you think that we could be kind of worse off than we are right now? And
I mean, I'll answer that. I won't try to attempt to answer that question from a U.S. perspective. Here, there's rules. You can't have more than 6 people when you meet. That's the law, and you got to respect that. Again, there's a greater good here, everyone. You do this for a reason. We have limited a lot of our social contact. We may see a family who we know is very precautious, and they meet that number, and we'll meet with them. This holiday season, we're not traveling to the United States. We're not going to go see my wife's family in Rome. It's the 4 of us. There's a bigger reason why we're doing this. This is not a permanent situation. The longer we don't take care of it, the more it extends. So if we just do what we need to do and kind of think about how we can help everyone else, then we'll celebrate the holidays with the 4 of us this year. And we'll Zoom call or, FaceTime families. This is what we are doing. And it's great. I know it's an inconvenience, but this second wave, it's impacted people that we know. The first wave, not as much. I'm seeing it more here because I don't know if people gotten a little bit more careless, or I don't know what it is. When people are impacted, it's frightening if you get this in a bad way. It really is. And I think it's easy to say it's okay if it doesn't touch you or one layer from you, but when it does, it makes you rethink things. And I think we have to do that. So I'm hopeful. I think it's great that the government's placing these restrictions on us. We need to abide by them. And actually, I have to say, when you walk on the street and you see someone not wearing a mask and doing that, you want to call them out, because they shouldn't be doing that. They shouldn't be doing that. If this is what the law is, we don't break into a building because we feel like it. That's what the law is. You got to do that. And I think if we can do that consistently, we'll get through this until this vaccine finally gets around to the people. It's going to go by layers. It's going to it's a long-term play here. So yes, I think people will abide by that. If they don't, it's really unfortunate. I hope they get called out on that. I wish that we would find the people to do. The fines here can be pretty high, 600 euros, 1,000 euros, and they should fine them.
The US should probably do that too. I have another question for you.
That's a whole other webinar on that topic.
I know,
but,
right?
We're
So
hopeful.
how are your children doing during all of this? And
Yeah.
are they able to see some friends or have some interaction
Yeah.
with friends? Because that's hard.
It was. The beginning was, I mean, again, for me right now, there's been 2 COVID periods. There's the first phase, what was like hardcore lockdown. We didn't leave our place for like 46 days. We didn't leave our flat, our apartment for 46 days straight. Now that was great in the beginning. After a while, it got tough, especially with distance learning when schools weren't ready to manage that. Now this is for them. I mean, kids are the most resilient people you're going to meet, and they're quite adaptable and creative. So they wear a mask every day to school. Their windows are open. Winter's coming. They're going to have to wear their coats and the blankets in school, maybe, but that's what you do. So our kids have done quite well because they're kind of independent. We found a ways to engage with them to be able to do that. We video, a lot of video conferencing with friends and family. But they just kind of accepted this is what it is now. And I think children accept it much more easier sometimes than adults do. And we let them know that this isn't going to be permanent, that we'll get through this. So our children and we see our friends are actually doing quite well. We do meet in smaller groups, but we only engage with families that we know are just as precautious as we are. You know, we're very precautious. Why? If I get sick, my wife's biggest fear is I'm out of service for 2 weeks. She'll be a single parent for 2 weeks, or vice versa. That operationally throws off the family system, and we can't have that. So I think the children are doing much better, and there's been tons of resources and support. It's an overabundance of what to choose from. So I think there's a lot out there to support the children and the parents who need it. Just probably sometimes more than the children. Yeah, but we're doing good. Thank you.
Thank you. Nydia, now you are a fourth-year student. How are things going with, like, what are your thoughts towards graduation, towards looking for jobs, internships?
Yeah, to be super straightforward, definitely concerned about graduation. Like, the fact that class of 2020 didn't get their graduation made me so sad. And then now realizing that I might be on the same boat is just like, oh my God, like, what am I going to do? Especially because, like, you know, you work so hard these 4 years, you really want to be able to, like, get your pictures at Royce and get your pictures by Powell and by the fountain and stuff. So it's kind of scary to think that, you know, even if I do get those, it's going to be in a very different world, very different scenario. Jobs, huge concern, especially as an international student. It was a lot scary during the presidential election period because all international students were facing a lot of backlash from the Trump administration. We got our, like, you know, our OPT time reduced. We weren't even able to, there was a point where we wouldn't have even been able to come back into the States, even if we wanted to. So international students have big fears about that. I do, definitely. I don't know how the like getting a job after graduation is going to work, because even if we're hunting online for them, the likelihood of getting it is pretty low, especially in this environment. I'm hoping that I'm able to, like, utilize my OPT, because I only get it for 1 year as a North Campus non-STEM major. Hoping to be able to utilize my OPT and at least be in the States for a year after my graduation. But I know it's going to be very, very difficult. So definitely there's a lot of concerns about it. If you're asking me what are, like, my thoughts on, like, solutions or what I'm going to do, I have no idea. Like, I'm at that point where I don't even know what's going on. So it's very difficult to think about. You know, I was planning stuff for graduation and now I can't even think about that. So thinking about something that's beyond that is just, like, something that I don't want to be making plans for, because I don't know where life is going to take me. But at the same time, best case scenario would be being able to use my OPT for at least a year so that I can stay back in the States, then maybe come back to Panama, work for a bit, and then grad school. I definitely am considering grad school. So that's where I'm at right now.
Thank you for that. And I do have a plug for UCLA One. It's our career platform for the Alumni Association. It has resources for students. You can reach out to alumni. There's a lot there. So check out that platform and participate in the different programs we have at the Alumni Association.
Writing it down right now. Thank you so much.
Sure, good. Okay, so I'm now going to do, we have about 5 minutes left. Shocking, this has gone so fast. I now want to do kind of rapid fire questions. So quick little answers from each of you. Okay, Sahil, we're going to start with you. Some hobbies that you've, something new that you've learned during this time.
Cooking, board games, Spanish,
Very
meditation
good.
and mindfulness. That's a hobby, and it's gone well.
It's a good one. Great. Evelyn, same question.
Let's see, watercolor, guitar, a little bit of French, I guess creative writing, casting.
Okay, John.
Reading more and trying to spend more time with the kids to be able to do that.
Excellent. Nydia.
And not missing traveling at all, to be honest. I'm enjoying not traveling at the moment.
Nice.
For work. Yeah.
Nydia.
I'm gonna say baking. My sister got me onto that. Binge watching, but I already kind of knew how to do that to a certain degree. And then having these like documentary nights with my family where we just like sit and watch a documentary so we can learn some more together.
I like that. That's a great idea.
Christine,
yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, go
for
ahead.
Nydia and Evelyn, get through your classes right now. That's what you got to get through. Take care of your family, take care of yourselves. You're not the only students who are worrying about what's happening next. I think we'll turn the corner. Hang in there. Reach out to us on the Alumni Association. Reach out to me if you want. The other alumni board or there. Just get through this first. You're not the only ones going through this. There'll be other things going through. I think things will start picking up, and just hang in there and people will help you get through this. I think that's part of what we do in the Alumni Association as Bruins and as fellow Bruins. So just get through that. Sometimes students are always thinking about what worry about what comes next. Take care of this now, and then the other things will work out. So just I want to throw that out there to you, both of you.
Very sage advice. Thank you, John. That was very spot on. So yes, take care of now. Don't worry about later. It'll happen. And we'll be out of this pandemic at some point. A couple other questions. Is there anything you will miss from this pandemic time? Like, is there something that you've really enjoyed that you might also take into the next new normal? John?
Oh, walking my kids to school. I mean, when I was traveling, I'm taking them to school, and that time you have with them. That's a big thing. So I would miss that, or it's making me rethink what I'm going to do going forward in terms of what I do. They grow up fast, and so that's one thing for me. I've enjoyed.
Thank you. Sahil?
We're allowed little bubbles here. It's kind of nice just spending inordinate amount of times with just a few people instead of stretching yourself really thin. I have a tendency to be overly sociable, and taking a step to dial it back, to think more about me and my mental health and the mental health of people around me, as opposed to trying to stretch myself too thin, has been a really rewarding experience. So focus on yourself. It's a perfect time for it.
Thank you. Nydia?
I think it's kind of a difficult question, but I think one thing that I really have enjoyed in this pandemic is, oddly enough, being able to like be in my room without a roommate and not be like bothered about there being a lot going on outside. So I can like be in my room and work without much issues. But the best part is I can be in my room and record stuff like for music without any disturbances, which has been wonderful. If I could possibly find a way to replicate that post-pandemic, it would probably be it.
Nice. Evelyn?
Yeah, well, I'm very much an introvert, so I really like that, not everyone's like bustling around outside. It makes me feel a lot more relaxed. And my reading time, I caught up on so many books during this downtime, and I really appreciate that.
Wonderful. Okay, so we have hit our hour mark. So I want to thank all of you panelists. You've done an amazing job. Thank you so much for participating. I also want to thank the viewers out there. Thank you for tuning in. We'll notify you when the recording is on the alumni YouTube channel. Also, you can stay connected via social media, find out more virtual programming happening at the UCLA Alumni online calendar, follow our Instagram, check out our YouTube channel. Also check out the UCLA International Education Week calendar for additional online events. And look for our follow-up email that will put all these links in. But again, thank you all and go Bruins.
Thanks, everyone.
Go Bruins.
Thank you.